Welcome back. You're watching Metropole TV, the first 24-hour business channel, and you are on Business Center, where today we are taking we are shedding a spotlight on matters agribusiness. And today in studio I have Benson Washira. He's the Public and Policy Director for Animal Network, Africa Animal Network Welfare. We'll be speaking about matters animal, your domestic animals at home, right here in studio. Thank you so much, sir, for making time for us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. So lots of Kenyans like to keep a lot of domestic animals at home. You know, from your perspective, what's the state of these animals in the homes of many of the Kenyans?
I think from time immemorial, Kenyans have always kept animals, and so it's not a new phenomenon. And the state of those animals is sometimes some of them are in a very bad state, but some of them are in very good state. So it depends on where these animals you find them. If you find the ones that have just been kept and nobody's taking care of them, then they're in a very sorry state of it. But the recognition of this, that animals need to be taken care of, is factored in the law, because we have quite a number of laws and legislation that deals with how you need to keep your animals. And even our constitution itself mentions about how animals, who has the responsibility of actually taking care of the animals. If you look at our Schedule 4, which gives the who has which functions, and I think part 22B, it talks about protection of animals and wildlife. If you go down then to the other part that gives the counties, the responsibility goes to counties in terms of animal husbandry. It also even gives them the control over dogs and even places of burial for animals. So from a general perspective of how things are, we would say that we are not very bad off. And I think I may not have the actual facts of it, but there is an index that was made of animal welfare index by the World Animal Protection, which at least puts us in a better position than many of the countries.
When you say the welfare of animals, someone is thinking, you know, I have my cat at home and I can kick it, and you know. So when you talk about animal welfare, what exactly are you looking at?
I'm looking at the way that animal copes within the environment that it lives. Is it free from hunger? Is it and thirst? Is it free of discomfort? Is the animal free of distress? Is it able to exhibit natural trait of itself? Is it free from pain, injury, and disease? So those are some of the parameters you would be able to look at. But we know that some animals don't have or don't meet all these welfares, because they are cumulative in a certain way. And it also depends with how that person values and sees animals. But even that, I don't think people need to take care of animals in that manner. You don't have to mistreat your animal. If you are a believer and you are Christians, you know what the Bible says. In Proverbs 12:10, it says that a righteous man takes care of his animal, but the mercies of the wicked is cruel. So that's one thing. Again, in the same Bible, on Proverbs 27:23, it talks about you get to know your herd and you get to know its condition. So those are some of the things. And from my brothers in the Islamic community, they also know that the Quran has a lot to do even with the way animals are. So I would say we need to treat our animals in a certain way. And to begin with, why do we keep them? They have a value. They could be casual, they could be companion, they could be to do something that we ourselves can't do. So there is a benefit that we derive from them. The same way we like servicing our cars, I think is the same way we think to start thinking about taking care of our animals. One very great leader in this world called Mahatma Gandhi said that the moral development of a society can be known by how they treat their animals.
All right. And you are very passionate about, there is this project about, you know, keeping poultry and
Yes.
under the system called chicken caging.
Okay.
And I understand ANAW had you know, its reservation on this system of keeping chicken. What's your perspective on the system of keeping chicken in cages?
My perspective is that it's a cruel system and it doesn't afford the animals, what I've just mentioned, to act in a natural way. Because those battery cages, they are cages that are put in rows and columns, and they offer no animal any way of being in a position to exhibit its natural traits, because it's just measured to the size of that animal, and there are many of them, and they don't have space, they cannot be able to exercise. And because this is also commercialized in a certain way, there is also other things that comes with it, because it is intensified and there is misuse of antibiotics. The way they are handled also, it's not a very good, in a very hygienic way. And so our perspective is that this is a system that needs a lot of legislation, so that our position is that we should not have chicken in battery cages. That's the position we would take. However, this system is touted by many as a
saving on space.
Saving on space. It's also seen as an answer to food security. It is seen as an opportunity for people to do business. But we need to have a conversation that asks ourselves, what are we losing by going battery cages? One, we are compromising on food safety. How does that food safety affect us? It comes back to our health, which means we are spending more money from the products that are coming from that system, which means that we need to ask ourselves, is it worth it? So that we can have a conversation that the people in business, the people in animal welfare, the veterinarian, the government itself, we need to get to a point where we have a discussion that for us, where we stand, we say we don't need battery cages system. But we are saying the other people need to hear us. Why do we hold that position? And why do they hold that position? When it compromises the food safety, are we willing to go that way? Doctors will tell you, and probably you should bring some doctor here and a veterinarian to tell you about antimicrobial resistance. That the more we are taking those animals coming from factory farming or battery cages, as the main one is called, because we are producing en masse, they will tell you how it is affecting the patients that they are seeing. And so that's our position, and we hold it very close to us, because we think that the animals are being not treated in the right way. There are laws that says we shouldn't do that, but it's a conversation that we need to have. It's a conversation that needs to lead to very good regulations. Let me give you a good example. In 1990, I think 1999, the European Union banned battery cages in Europe. And they said, this is not what it is. Now, what does that do to us? We can produce chicken here, but we can't export, because we are raising them in a system that is not acceptable to them. So it's something that we need to talk about.
All right, and so in that same breath, then what are the options for these chicken, poultry, or rather poultry farmers?
I think we need to think about organic farming. We need to think about free-range rearing of chicken. The only challenge would come, if I say this to many people, they will tell me we have no space. If we are committed to our health, if we are committed to our environment, because also that system of farming also brings a lot of methane gas, which also affects the air pollution. I think we need to find a way of getting back to how we can grow food that is safe to us, and we can grow food and we can produce food that also will not bring environmental issues and compromise on our health and compromise on our safety. We could be gaining by having battery cages in chicken, but we are losing out. So the question is, which side is the scale? And I can tell you the scale will not be on the side of battery cage chicken farm.
All right, so from what I'm picking from you is that the animal has to behave in its natural way.
Yes.
Let's talk about zero grazing.
Yes.
Would you support zero grazing?
The space of zero grazing is not as small as it is, because if you look at the herds that are put in the zero grazing, most of them are given an opportunity to get out a little bit. But these are chicken that are less restricted. They can't even move. And that's why if you take those chicken that are raised that way, you notice they have no muscles. Just one day, just do an experiment. Put one chicken here from which is the whatever people call kienyeji, and put the other one on this other side, and see the difference of the muscle texture.
All right. And so you also said that now this kind of chicken, since is banned, the system is banned in other countries, so Kenya cannot export chicken raised in this way to other countries.
Especially,
are there, all right,
yes,
go ahead.
Especially in the European Union. Yes.
So are there any other animals that probably because of the way they're being raised, then we cannot get an export market?
One, the animal welfare, how we treat our animals matters. So every country have their own standards. So if you don't meet their standard of how animals needs to be raised or produced from production to processing, and we say from the farm to the fork, we have a challenge with that. Yeah, and there are few countries, I think, in Africa that are being able to do the exports of their animal products because of the levels of animal welfare standards. And in that is why we need to have this conversation about animal welfare. And I can tell you the Office of DVS, which is the Director of Veterinary Service, is doing a lot of work in that regard, and the county governments themselves. But we need the public to understand that there is a position for the animals in the whole sustainable development. Yes.
You mentioned about the public. Is there an awareness then? I mean, how well aware are the public about the welfare of animals?
When that question ever comes to me, I face a challenge, because the challenge that I face is that, is there anybody who doesn't know that animals are sentient? Meaning that they have feelings. Meaning that you can just look, if you keep a dog or if you keep a cat or your cows, there is a way they recognize you. There is a way they know who you are. They don't just respond the same way to people. So I would find a challenge of saying nobody doesn't know that. The question is, why don't we treat animals in that manner? It is because sometimes we have the notion that they may not respond, they may not feel pain.
They don't talk.
They don't talk. And we could think that we could do everything. I think the understanding of animal welfare to people is there. It is the commitment to actually practice it. That it is. Any one of us who grew up in the village, you could see how your dad would treat his cows. You would be asked to go and look for dry grass and come and put where they sleep. Why? Because he wanted them to be free from discomfort. You would find you being asked, give them water, give them food, is because he wanted them to be free from hunger and that. You could be asked, don't beat the cows because you don't have to inflict pain. So we are trying to look at animal welfare now from a scientific point, but culturally, Kenyans have always had that notion of animal welfare.
And what are you doing as a farm to ensure that all these rights, the animal rights, are well taken care of?
I would not use the word animal rights because people who use the word animal rights, they are on the other spectrum where they say we don't have to use the animals, we don't have to do anything with the animals, we cannot utilize them for ourselves. I would speak about the welfare of the animals. Because that is where we are saying you take care of these animals, they will give you better products, they will serve you better. So I would be on the side of welfare as opposed to the side of right. And that's why I spoke of welfare. I didn't speak about rights. And so what we are doing is, one, we are trying to be able to bring the awareness into people by having, sometimes we do free vaccination. And that free vaccination is accompanied with education and awareness. We are doing for animals like dogs and cats and donkeys. That's one. And then also we are holding conferences. We have just held an African Animal Welfare Conference where we had delegates from almost 35 countries. And we speak about animal welfare, and we hold that conference with the United Nations and African Union body, and we also do the aspect of just having the children in schools being able to do. One thing that we have done as animal welfare organizations under the forum of AWAKE, which is our Animal Welfare Action Kenya, is that we also lobbied and understood that animal welfare is an emerging issue. And so in the new curriculum, it is actually one of the things that is being taught in our schools.
All right, so you start to teach the kids when they're still in
Yes.
primary school. As they grow up, they know that the welfare has to,
And it's not just the welfare. You cannot divorce animal welfare from sustainable development. You cannot divorce animal from human health. You cannot divorce animal from environment. So all of it. Why are we talking about COVID-19? It's just the way we handle animals. It's just we don't take care of them, because most of the diseases that are in human, they actually come from animals. But the animals have a higher tolerance than us. So when it comes to us, it affects us more. So, and that is why we end up with these zoonotic diseases and pandemics that we are. I can tell you, we are still going to have another pandemic unless people change the way they take care of the animals and the way they interact with animals.
Right. And what are people doing in the other countries? Rather, what are the lessons that Kenya can learn from other countries in regards to animal welfare?
We can learn lessons of how, especially enforcement of legislation, because I think that's one area that we are very poor in terms of how we enforce laws. I think we also have a level of not being able to integrate animals into our development. So I think our policymakers, we need to see a way of integrating animal welfare into our development. And I could go back and just say, in the older cultural setup, everything was revolved around animals in terms of wealth, in terms of culture, in terms of exchange. So animals were always in the midst of people's lives. And that's the same way we need to get to as we move forward.
Someone is probably asking themselves, if I notice an animal is not, is being mistreated, then what next? What do I do?
What do you do? Yes, there are within the counties, we have counties veterinary director. Within the counties, we also have sub-county veterinary officers. You can also report to animal welfare organizations like ourselves, African Network for Animal Welfare. You can call KSPCA. There are many ways you can be able to do that. But now that brings the questions that I'm talking about. I should be able to go to a police officer and say there is an animal that is being mistreated, because there is a law in this country that prohibits cruelty of animals, and which is an unenforceable act. But I tend to think if you were ever to go to the police and tell them that, they'll tell you they have much more on their hands.
They probably think you're crazy.
Yes. Well, that has been said many times.
Oh, wow. So what's the future then, as we finish this, of animal welfare in regards to, all this said and done? What do you see as the future of the animal welfare?
If I want to talk about the future, I need to step back a little bit into the backwards, and I say, as I have mentioned earlier, that animals were part and parcel of every aspect of our human life. The future of animal welfare is that we need to integrate it into our developments. We need to see it from an aspect of environment. We need to see it from an aspect of our health. And the future of it is that we cannot ignore animal welfare and think that we can go ahead on other spheres of development, because animals are part and parcel of development. They're part and parcel of environment, and they're also part and parcel of our own health. So as we think about animals, we need to think from our own benefit as opposed to the benefit of the animals, because sometimes people tend to think that when you're taking care of animals, we are investing in no return. But investing in animal welfare, it is investing for ourselves.
All right.
Yes.
Well said. Thank you so much, Benson Washira, the Policy and Public Affairs Director at the Animal Network, Africa Animal Network for Animal Welfare, speaking to us on matters animal welfare. Now you know that your animal right there at home has its own welfare and that needs to be taken care of. Thank you so much for making time for us. That's where we end the show today. Be sure to join us again next week for another episode of Business Center, where we shed a spotlight on matters agribusiness. I'm Victoria Munga. Have a blessed day.